Welcome to one of the first sessions. My name is Bob Dvorak. I'm an assistant professor at Central Michigan University. And kind of to introduce you to this track, the Stewardship Beyond the Trail. This is a track that's being sponsored by the Society for Wilderness Stewardship, for which I'm a board member of. And our organization is focused on different ways to advance the profession of wilderness stewardship and wilderness management. A little bit about myself. I grew up in North Dakota, so it's kind of all wilderness when it's wintertime there. But having some experience there, having an undergraduate degree in wildlife biology, they determined that I couldn't find a job in wildlife biology, and decided to look at protected area management for my graduate work. So spent some time in Zion National Park working with the National Park Service on backcountry issues, assisting a little bit with their general management plan, and then went on to the Boundary Waters for my dissertation, where I spent 4 months looking at wilderness experiences and the different types of wilderness avenues. So that's a little bit about myself. Today what I want to talk about is some of the trends that we've seen in wilderness and some of those issues and impediments we might see to future visitation. What are some of those key areas that are going to cause those challenges? Concerns. So the study that I'm going to talk about, we've been working on, started back in 2007, and it was a trend study for the Boundary Waters. So for those of you that have heard of the Boundary Waters before, a very iconic area, one of those areas that came with the original designation in 1964, and we've had a lot of history there. We've been able to have a very good picture of how things have been changing. So our goals were to really see what's been happening there for the last 40 years. How are we seeing different user characteristics in how that's happening? Because we really want to be able to update the managers there on, what's current visitation look like? How has that changed? Where is that bringing us to? And then from there, explore the results of some of the policies and other issues they've had. So you look at an area like the Boundary Waters, they've had natural disturbances. So in 1999, they had the extremely large blowdown, where a large part of the Lotus area was affected by windstorms. They've had pretty big catastrophic fires across a lot of different areas. And then they've had also those other policy changes, the introduction of fees, the introduction of permits, where and where not to have motorized access. So we've had these things going on there, and we wanted to understand and explore, really where those are going. Briefly, for those of you that haven't been to the Boundary Waters, and if you haven't, I would strongly suggest that you go. It is a little bit over 1 million acre wilderness located in northeastern Minnesota. Right around 200,000 annual visits, which places it at one of the more highly visited wilderness areas in the country annually. And it operates under a very strict permit quota system. So there's 74 different entry points to the Boundary Waters Wilderness, and you have to have a specific permit to go into any one of those. So they have a certain allocation for which days, and allocations for motorized use, allocations for day motorized use, and they've had to be a very intricate model on how that's going to work. And it's also an area where there's a vast amount of personal experience. So over 70% of the visitors are usually repeat visitors. They have a very large history, long time of understanding what this place has been like. And talking with locals there when I was there, most of them remember it when it wasn't the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. They're like, it's the Boundary Waters. They don't like to put the extra W's on it. They get a little bit upset when you add those to it. So you have a lot of that going on with the ability of trying to manage it effectively. So what we did is we had a couple different studies. In 1969, George Stanky had done a study looking at visitor trends. In 1991, there was a follow-up by David Line. So we followed kind of what they had done before, trying to see how to make some changes, how to make adjustments, and trying to really be up to date with current management strategies. So we know certain things weren't how they were managing anymore. We wanted to make sure our issues were current. We did it during the peak season, which is usually where about 75% of their use takes place, between basically Memorial Day and Labor Day. And then we went to all these sites, or I should say I went to all these sites. We tried to find the best method of approach to go to these 74 different access points. So we looked at the top 17, which accounted for about 90% of the use, And we had a different strategy of where were we going to be sitting and where were we going to be placed to conduct these studies. So we spent some time there, some time at the Forest Service ranger districts at the permitting stations that are located around the wilderness area. Had everyone fill a short on-site interview, asking them for contact information, asking them about past experiences, and then we mailed them back a final post-trip survey to fill out at home. Took about 20 minutes for people to fill it out, pretty much lengthy in detail on that. And overall, we were pretty happy. We had about a 70% response rate. So we got over 600 surveys returned from those visitors there. All right, so some key things. First thing we wanted to look at was just your basic kind of demographic information. And as you can kind of see here, hopefully it's not too small in the back, the mean age is definitely increasing. So 69, the average age was 26. Jumped about 10 years in 91 to 36. Then jumped almost another 10 years to 45 in 2007. So we saw that age increasing largely. The percentage of students, we asked them yes or no, are you currently a student? Decreased. So where it was about half students in 1969, down to 18%, down to 11%. So they're not being represented as much anymore. And the last one, which we'll talk about more in detail a little bit too, the ratio of males to females. You know, that it's about a 3-to-1 ratio of women to men when it comes to visitation at the Boundary Waters. And even though we've seen changes, we've seen more opportunities for women, we've seen programs targeted to get women more into wilderness, it hasn't changed in the Boundary Waters for some reason. For some reason, it's still a very male-dominated experience. We've also seen the group sizes change, or the groups seen changed per day. Right around 4 groups a day back in 69 and 91, all the way to now almost 9, 8.5 to 9. I always like those averages when it's 0.6 of a group, so you can figure out what that means for you. But we've seen it almost double over that time period. And we've also seen people's opinion of crowding change. So originally, they were saying there were places that were not overcrowded. 72% were pretty happy about that. And that started to slip, down to 44, down to 38. And we saw places where they're saying there's at least some crowding. So over half the people in 2007 said there's at least some places that are crowded. Now we can take away with a little bit of confidence that the crowded in most places, they haven't got to double digits yet, so that's good. But it's still something that the managers and the wilderness staff there are very concerned about and paying attention to it.